If you enjoyed this video, a like and subscribe would be appreciated. And remember, I'm live on Twitch as soon as Trials comes out. But this video is unscripted, so there might be a little bit of yapping. And I didn't sadly have time to do any visual edits, so it's just going to be some background gameplay. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video though. I'll see you. Okay, let me get this straight. First of all, there was a little bit of misunderstanding, because of course I didn't specifically say it's not a problem that crafting is a thing in Destiny, it's the way they executed the crafting. Now, I'm not trying to make this game only for sweats, because I understand Bungie's player base more than, I understand them quite well, and that's like kind of what I've been trying to understand in PvP for quite a while, and settle down with overall more player-based opinions more than just being the best at the game opinions. Because I'm, of course, no close to being the best, but you get my point. And crafting in general has some flaws. And if you watched yesterday's video, which I would highly recommend to do, I mentioned that Grasp of Avarice will literally be irrelevant. There's no reason to ever do it at all, ever again. Because you can just craft Beloved, Austringer. You can craft the Taken Sword from last season, I'm pretty sure it's the same model, same perks, same everything. And you can just craft Prophet of Doom next season. So Matador is probably going to be, power crept by it. Now, this is not for certain. There might be reasons you would prefer the older weapons, like Matador. First of all, Matador has a really weird stat, like it has 80 impact compared to every other precision frame shotgun. It doesn't change the damage value at all. I'm pretty sure Bungie's just doing it to fuck with our heads, but the reason Matador is so much better is because it has something called a threat detector perk instead of slideways or quick draw. Threat detector is the better option for sure, because when you're close to one person you get a handling buff and animation scaler, which Slideways doesn't give you. And yes, Threat Detector times 2 is a lot faster than Quick Draw has ever been. I wouldn't mind, because I completely agree with you. The RNG system in this game is flawed, it's broken, and it's not fair for anyone. And I completely agree. That's why, of course I didn't mention this in the video, I would prefer something else. And this else would be something similar to, the Chalice from Season of Opulence, which you could put in runes to focus for a specific weapon for X specific perks. And I found this amazing. It made it so much easier to farm for stuff, and you were guaranteed to get what you were after. There was no RNG if you were going to get the weapon to drop. The only RNG at the end of the day was going to be if you got the 5 out of 5. And even then, your odds are so high because you have 2 columns for the perks you're after, and the columns you're after, there's a 1 in 2 chance of it dropping. So at the end of the day, you're gonna have a really easy time farming for it. But of course, Bungie scrapped this idea because they realized, I don't know, maybe it was not efficient enough for people to sustainably play the activity. Or wait, people love the activity. But at the end of Beyond Light, or at the end of Season 11, Season of Rivals, no one was really playing the activity whatsoever, which would be the Menagerie. And you can say the same for the Forges. I would say they had a pretty interesting loot incentive, which was if you had the frame, you would get the weapon to drop. And every single forge had different weapons that could drop. So if you wanted Kindle Orchid, you would go into the Nessus forge and you would most likely get the weapon to drop, as long as you had the frame for the weapon. And it made it really easy to farm for them, because you could specifically get the frames you wanted. You could go to Ada, buy the frame, you finish the frame, and then you complete the activity, and then you get the weapon. You see how the cycle works? But now we have something like Dares of Eternity, right? You have a 1 in 70 drop chance to get the weapon you want. A 1 in 70. Of course, you can increase this by 4 if you get the lightning rounds. You can get 4 drops per round, but how often does that really happen? So 1 in 70 drop chance each week. There's a 3-week rotation with around 200 drops total. And just think about that. Think about trying to focus farm for something at all. It's irrelevant. There's a reason no one plays Dares anymore, because you don't get what you want after it. The only thing you're really guaranteed to get is the Dares of Eternity specific weapons, which is going to be the 30th anniversary weapons, which is the Halo weapons. But you get my point. If you're not going for any of those weapons, it's just meaningless to play Days of Eternity. Even if you really want, for example, a Fractal Fist. A 1 in 70 drop chance is not worth it at the end of the day because it's literally impossible odds. Every 15 or so minutes you get one drop, and you have to repeatedly do this over and over and over and over 70 times before you maybe even just get one to drop. Because you need to remember, this loot pool is heavily infiltrated by armor, which is why the loot pool is so unbelievably high. That's another problem, actually, because all armor is now irrelevant because of the helm focusing table. If you focus anything at the helm, you're gonna have a most likely chance of getting something around 65 to 68 stat roll armor. They're gonna have insane splits if you put the ghost mod on, and you're most likely, if you focus enough engrams, going to get 30-30 split armor, which I want you to understand, which is the highest you could possibly get. 30-30-2-2-2-2, I'm pretty sure, is the highest split you can get on any armor. That will end you up with 68, and no legendary armor can go past that capacity. Now, of course, exotic armor can actually go slightly higher, but it's really, really, inconsistent. Good luck. Anyway, you get my point, right? Armor drops don't really matter unless you're after cosmetics, because you can just go to the helm and focus the engrams, and then you're gonna get the godroll armor. So something Bungie could have done would have been they removed the armor to drop in general, especially if they don't have any special slots, like any specific mod perks or anything like that specifically for that armor piece. Like how all the raid armor has their own pieces for the raid specific mods. I feel like if it doesn't have that, there's no real reason for them to drop to begin with. Because at the end of the day, when you get the cosmetic, unlock the cosmetic for it, the stat armor is most likely going to be garbage 9 out of 10 times. And the only real way you're going to be able to get high stat armor is going to be through the helm, which is the easiest method ever. You just pay 1,000 glimmer and 1 engram, and then you're getting godroll armor. But you're getting my point, right, on the armor system, how it's just completely filler loot for you to just play more in general. Especially when the armor sets are wasteful, useless. Of course, there's no loot protection either, because the game doesn't know what you're after. So if you're farming for one specific weapon, the game has zero clue whatsoever. Because Bungie has never thought about adding some loot protection for you to farm for anything at all. And this is why you can see someone going over to Days of Eternity, trying to farm for whatever, a Fractal Fist, let's say, and never getting one to even drop to begin with. Probably does 120 runs and not even see one. No, not even one. Or maybe someone trying to farm for a bow and Iron Banner and literally plays as much as he possibly can every single week to don't get the bow he's after, not the perks. Because this is a specific bow player. He's after the perfect 5 out of 5 roll. And he knows exactly what he's after. But he doesn't stop playing. And then you have someone else, right? Let's put me into perspective. Let's say I am him just randomly and the other guy is Hinra. I don't really care about bows. And I open one engram to see what I get. Whoa, I get the 5 out of 5. That would have never happened in reality, right? Right. And then you have Hinra. He plays for 2 weeks straight of Iron Banner. And then finally, I don't even know if he got it, but he's playing for 2 weeks straight to trying to get something. And I just open one engram. You get my point, right? It's really, really dumb. But don't worry. This is how every single drop in this whole game works, unless they're craftable. So I'm kind of thankful for craftable weapons to begin with, because it kind of removes the whole point of playing the game. If I'm after something and it's craftable, I'll just do that activity until I craft the weapon. And then, whoa! I don't need to do anything. Now I have all the perks I get, all the perks I want, perfect stat roll, perfect 5 out of 5. You get my point, right? It's a perfect weapon. And I did 0, nada. Because the thing about crafted weapons as well, they have an exclusive thing to them. They have the Adept Masterwork to them, which is going to be the focusing stat on whatever that's called. It literally is a Masterwork for Adepts. Whenever you put, let's say, a range Masterwork on the weapon, it will get +2 in every single stat. Guess what happens when I Masterwork my range Adept Ignis Hammer as well? It will get plus 10 range and plus 2 in every stat. So that's another advantage, crafted weapons have over normal weapons. On top of that, they can get enhanced perks, which means they will give you benefits for having that weapon enhanced. So moving target might be, more aim assist, snapshot sight might be stability for free. And you get the point. It just goes down the ladder. Every single thing gives you something new and better that makes the perk more exclusive and, more worth having as enhanced than not. And it kind of does feel like it's a power creep in a scenario where it's like, if the weapon's not craftable, it's just not going to be relevant. And that really hurts. At the same time, that's not true. Because just look at the PvP scenario right now. What's the most used weapons you see? Unending Tempest, Matador, and then I'm trying to not to mention exotics here, so that's one thing. But those two weapons are really, really good to show that, it doesn't matter really if it's crafted or not. As long as the gun has ridiculous stats, as long as the gun has the best perks in the game, people will use it. And of course, the model does matter at the end of the day. And that's the reason I'm not a fan of Unending Tempest, because the sway on the scope is so unbelievable on mouse and keyboard. It does hurt my eyes, but luckily I can just put on the Stasis 600 RPM SMG, and the sway isn't as bad. And on top of that, it's craftable, so I can just pick and choose the perks I want myself. Again. So you get my point, right? Craftable weapons add some sort of power creep to normal weapons. If someone gives you a craftable kinetic 120, most people are just going to put on round robin. You don't see really anyone, except for people with steady hands, use a 120 in the kinetic slot. You don't really see anyone use the Moon 120 or Krimmel's Dagger. Maybe there's some guy out there, but the ones with kill clip, guess what they're using? Round robin. Now, if round robin had slide shot, I don't think you would be seeing any other handkins but that. But again, I wasn't trying to make the video to slander on people who aren't really the, someone said the top 20, not for the top 80. That's what this video sounds like. But I'm not trying to talk about the majority of the player base here. I'm just trying to say and explain seasonal content would have been great if they weren't so meaningless. Now, for someone who doesn't really care about the story at all anymore, for someone who kind of just don't care about it whatsoever, I don't play the seasonal story for the story. I play the seasonal activities for the weapons. And let's just say, you don't even need to play the activity to get the rewards. Which means the activity for me is completely useless. I'm not saying it's a bad activity, I'm just saying there's no absolute reason to play it whatsoever. Instead, I can just play something like Trials of Osiris and get the engrams and craft all the weapons without even touching the playlist like more than once. And that was my problem. It makes kind of the game less replayable by adding the craftable weapons, at least for the story side of the game. Now, I can say this, the Neomuna place, I think they did a pretty good job on the Neomuna, with the weapons at least, because they made some craftable and some not. So let's say you're after the SMG, you need to go onto Neomuna and complete the specific day of override on Neomuna. But there are other weapons, like Round Robin. You have to go around and complete activities and just pray you get 5 red borders. And it makes it so you actually have to play patrols if you want to craft all the weapons. And I find that actually pretty good. I don't even mind it at all whatsoever, because it's not hard to get your hands on an engram. It's not... Okay, it's definitely boring, but it doesn't mean it's not replayable, because you can sit there for hours and try to farm for, the weapons you're after. Now, most people have the weapons crafted by now because there used to be an exploit to get the red borders really fast. Bungie has now indeed patched that, and someone like me who hasn't really gotten all the red borders definitely suffers from it. But I think, if you understand where I'm coming from, you will see why I'm not a fan of the crafting system to begin with. Mainly because of the way it's set up. It's not hard to get the 5 red borders, it's not grindy to get the 5 red borders. It's super easy and you don't really have to do anything whatsoever. I just personally think it removes the replayability for actually farming for a weapon. For someone who's been playing the game for years, it was that feeling of running into the forges or running into, let's say, a Last Wish, or anything like that to farm for a weapon and try to pray that you got something like a curated role. And Bungie did indeed remove this, but it added something to the loot table that was unique to that loot table. Let's say Kindle Orchid, Kill Clip, Rampage, Drop Mag, curated role. And it was so cool because a lot of people were getting it to drop. It didn't have a crazy high drop rate. And if you really wanted it, you knew exactly how to get it, and it wasn't a pain whatsoever. Now, of course, there were a lot of people who didn't like the forges, thought they were really boring, and at the end of the day, there's just so much you can do to an activity. It was a good way of Bungie implementing an activity that you could farm. I think if they made it longer, it would have been worse, and if they made it shorter, it would have been really, really boring. Because it would just be you loading in and loading out, loading in, loading out, loading in, loading out. And I think they executed Forges was perfect for the way they set it up. So they made it easy to farm for weapons, they made the activity pretty fast and pretty reliable to do. On top of that, they added a triumph forcing you to complete 100 of each forge. So at the end of the day, you didn't really have a problem doing so, at least if you were going for blacksmith, right? Menagerie. They made the activity longer for a 6-man activity and, it lasting a little bit more. But at the end of the day, you could force the perks you wanted, or almost, because it was 1 and 2 drop chance of those perks. Like, there was let's say you had snapshot and moving target on the same column, it would be between those two on the dropped weapon. Let's say beloved. It would be between those two perks on the weapon if you put in an X specific rune set. So you weren't guaranteed to get the perk, but you were in 50-50 on getting the perk you wanted, basically, right? You understand what I'm saying? And those two perks were 50-50. You were guaranteed to get a beloved, by the way, and at the end of the day, you were just all up to RNG if you were lucky enough to get the perfect god roll or a 4 out of 5. But they made the activity longer for the change of it. And people seem to love it. First of all, there was an exploit when it came out, forcing you to be able to open a lot of chests, but that's besides the point. And now, of course, the crafting system is a good thing for other reasons as well, and that comes specifically to Whirlpool weapons. Now, the Whirlpool is going to change a lot next season, mainly because they're making all the X weapon, which is going to go under Hawkeye, Suros, Vice, and Amalon, focusable from the gunsmith. So all of those weapons that's specifically under the faction Amalon, Hawkeye, Vice, or Suros, all of those weapons are going to be focusable and only drop from the gunsmith. But the world weapons, like let's say the Vision, and all those other weapons are going into the loot pool, the world loot pool, the most inconsistent drop place there ever been. If you're after a Vision, let's say, there's no way of you even thinking about getting it. And Bungie was really dumb on this because they never gave us a way to focus. Okay, they gave us this back in the day. Whenever factions were around, they gave us a way to focus for future war cult specific weapons that was still in the loot pool. And then they remove it from us and think that we're just gonna forget about it. No, that was an amazing way of doing it, and the fact that they haven't done it to the rest of the weapons or removed the feature is fucking dumb. It makes it basically impossible to get whatever weapon from the world loot pool you're after because there is 900 billion fucking armor pieces and like 10 weapons. So 9 out of 10 times you're going to get the most useless weapon or you're going to get an armor piece. But that's not my final problem. My final problem is going to be not any of the destination places, because all of them really have a good way of farming. The moon one has an excellent way of farming for the weapons. Just go and check and you'll see what I mean. And then you have Europa. Europa is a little bit different, but at least it has a way of farming, and so would Neomuna. I think, at the end of the day, Bungie could add more on top of it, but the way they executed the planetary drop pools, I think it was pretty good, because it's straightforward and pretty easy to farm for. But the last one is going to be sunsetting. And this one has been sitting with me for a while, because Of course, sunsetting was really bad, but we really got distracted from the main problem to begin with. And while everyone was using their new flashy guns from Beyond Light, no one really thought about, yo, I can no longer use my Recluse and Mountaintop instead of anything at all. And no, that's not true, because you can use it instead of 9 out of 10 raids nowadays. But the problem about it was all those weapons that were in the pool that they removed had such a big impact on the game, you can say. And the way they did that was they literally just removed half the game, and with that, half of the activities. And I can completely say it doesn't mean that people were playing it, because people weren't. See, what you guys need to understand, for everyone who goes back and saying sunsetting was bad, why did they even do it? It was because no one was playing it. First of all, people were saying back then, what is there even to do in the game? Of course, we were in mid-through season 11, and the drought was unbelievable. But you need to remember, there was literally no one playing it. Of course, a lot of people were doing the old raids before they removed them because they made the raids farmable, which was an amazing feature, by the way. And I wish they kept it more than just a weekly raid. But at least we have the feature. So, that's another thing. But I think the fact that they removed so many fan-favored weapons from the loot table, like imagine if Bungie brought back, even think about it, the Reckoning, the Menagerie, the Forges, Scourge of the Past, Crown of Sorrow, Leviathan, Eater of Worlds, Spire of Stars. Any of these things being added back would add such a bigger wave of players even thinking about installing the game again. And Bungie can easily do this. It will take a little bit of time, but they have no problem even adding back any of those things I just mentioned. They need to re-evaluate it basically to the latest version of Destiny 2, and then basically it's shipped and done. And now I'm not even gonna say I know how hard that is, but you get my point, right? They have the resources to do it, they just choose to not to. And, okay, this is also going under the loot structure, because this is the way they've been milking players for years. And hey Bungie, I don't have a problem with the game, I have a problem with the way you guys are doing it. And yes, I've heard the things of you guys saying, we can't over-deliver, because that will set high expectations. But people want to be over-delivered. People want to have high expectations for a AAA game like Destiny. And people want to feel an experience of an amazing game they can play every day. Because that's what you guys want us to feel. You guys don't want us to feel like slaves, sitting here, drowning in whatever we can do. Literally logging onto the game, telling myself, what am I supposed to do? What is there to do? What can I do? Instead of knowing, oh my god, we need to do that. You know? If you understand where I'm coming from. And that's how it's been feeling for quite some time now. But listen, my final point of this problem is going to come to the way they're releasing weapons. And look, we all loved old Igneous and we all love new Igneous, but they're not the same gun. We can literally all agree on that. It's not the same gun. One of them can't even get quick draw snapshot, the other one gets slick draw. But you get my point. They're not the same gun whatsoever. And if they ever bring back Steady Hand, will it even be close to the same gun? Probably not. They might remove Slide Shot, because Bungie really doesn't seem like people like... Slide Shot is broken, that's all I want to say. But people want the weapon they originally knew. They don't want some clone of the weapon, you can say. People are after the same weapon they originally knew. If they ever bring back, let's say, the Forge weapons, I'm not looking for a knockoff Kindle Orchid that can get multi-kill clip Rampage, for example. You see what I'm saying? Or I'm not looking for anything in that deal, basically. I'm looking for the kill clip Rampage drop mag, and I specifically say drop mag because it's no longer a perk in the game that drops on anything, because that was what made the weapon good. Even if they made it craftable, it literally wouldn't be the same without drop mag, and people know this. People completely know this, at least for the people who owns the gun still, which I sadly don't. And they're just giving us these knockoff versions of each new gun that comes back, Like, you can say they did something different with the Aikilos weapons, but at the same time, they removed the original way of getting the Aikilos weapons. So first they give us the version 1, which was the year 1 versions. Then they give us the versions 2, which was the secondary version that came out in season 10, which was a good addition because they had some cool unique perks themselves and different traits with themselves, but they never got sunset. And then they come up with the versions 3, removing version 2 completely. And they don't have the same perks, they don't have the same, everything. But the version 3 is still better because it has the origin trait and other things. So it kind of ends up being, if you like this perk combo on Aikilos, you better have it already. But if you don't, take this and we can maybe make you feel like it's the same thing, if you know what I mean. I just don't quite enjoy it. It kind of ruins the point of waiting for a new weapon to return because you know at the same time it's not going to be the same weapon. I mean, you have a good example like Beloved. That thing came back with the same perks but better. You have something like Imperial Decree. That thing came back with the same perks but better. They seem to be handling the Opulence weapon very differently from everything else. They seem to be making those the same thing but better. But you don't see that with everything. Like I said earlier, Ignis Hammer. That thing didn't even come back to even close to what the old perks were. And next season we're getting Eye of Soul returning. Who knows if it even can get the snapshot opening shot that we all knew and loved on that? Because they removed it once. Who can say they're going to remove it again? You know? You get my point, right? Anyway, I've been talking for 30 minutes. If there's anything else you want me to cover, if there's something you disagree with me on, if you even just want to just state your opinion on what I just mentioned, leave something in the comments. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little talk, and I love you all. I'll see you guys around. Goodbye.